Car was working fine. Drove like 20 minutes to get here. Stopped, shut the engine off, and within like 2 minutes later, can't restart the car. Won't crank. Battery seems to be okay, but I cannot be sure because it won't crank. Hi guys, so I want to give a little bit of summary of what happening to my non-start one. So the car didn't want to work out of the blue. So we, with the CAA, they came and they boot my battery. They booted from the terminal in the engine bay. They also booted from the battery here, and the car still don't want to start. So I read a little bit of online and find out what would be the no cranking situation is, and some suggestion that the IBS battery management system may be the culprit, and that would be this wire right here, go from the positive side, and that one connected to the bottom side of the negative on the battery terminal. Some say that they disconnect that and the car would start. I disconnect that, the car didn't start, and I don't really know why, how that do it, but I'm pretty sure they must have a good reason for it. So I tried that and it didn't work. It is now reconnected because that didn't solve the problem. And then I check in all these fuses. Wherever I can see there's a fuse panel, I check them. So I checked all these guys here with the battery disconnect. I ran and I checked every terminal in here. Make sure terminal across the fuse here. Make sure that they are still good and nothing burned. There is a starter relay right here, that black relay. When you click the push start button, this solenoid fire, and I have actually pulled that solenoid out, and I test for resistance across the terminal, and the coil terminal read 60 ohm, around 60 something, 62 perhaps, and didn't seem like anything wrong with it, so I put it back. Some said that they replaced the coil to get started, which I'm sure they probably have a good reason for that. But this car has 213,000 kilometers on it, so it still worked. The fuse here is pretty dry. There's nothing damaged. This car is pretty clean. There's never been any water inside here, so this is what you see here. I recharged the battery with a battery charger overnight, and disconnect the battery charger, and the battery basically measure when there's no charger connected. It's 12.6, 12.7 volt. With the charger overnight, the battery is strong. This battery is about 4 or 5 years old, maybe 4 years old. The brand new battery from BMW. It's actually cost about $280, I recall. So I don't expect this to be bad, but anyway, so it's still good battery, and it still didn't help, no crank. So further to diagnostic of non-start issue with the car, the starter won't crank, so I decide to change the starter itself, because the car has 213,000 kilometers. So I said, okay, why not? I wasn't expect to spend a lot of time changing the starter, as complication as this car is, but I bought it anyway. And after I received the starter, I realized how hard it is to change the starter. I need to find out whether the starter is actually working. So I have to do a lot of probe testing around that. And while I'm at it, I decide to change the starter. So to change the starter in this car is actually quite a bit of task. It takes about 4 to 5 hours, and maybe shorter if you know what you're doing. And I don't know what I'm doing, so I spend all the time figuring out how to get to the starter. To get to the starter, you have to remove the airbox. This airbox has to come out, and you have to remove all this thing in the back, which is pretty quick to do that. Disconnect the intercool pipe, the air intake pipe on the bottom of the intake manifold, and I essentially pull the intake manifold out, but I didn't remove it completely because there's more connection at the bottom, and I could remove them, but I'm afraid I may break some of the contact, which I don't really need to if I don't have to. I did remove this guy, put him aside to get more room, and I pull the intake manifold up, and then I tie it down to the wheel with a strap so that the thing doesn't move around when I'm working on it. And the thing about remove the intake manifold, there is there's a pipe in the back here that go around the back of the head. It's a hard plastic pipe, and that stops the intake manifold from coming out easy. So to remove the intake manifold, you have to loosen the screw behind that head. It's basically a torque screw, and by losing it out or take it out, the screw won't fall out because it's self-retaining with the rubber grommet. And take the screw out though. No, you don't take the screw out of the grommet. Sorry, excuse me for that. But just loosen out, and then push the pipe here back, maybe about 1/2 inch, enough that you can pull the intake manifold out from the stud. The stud is very long, so you clear that stud and get them out of the way, and then tie it down. Now you have access to the starter and change the starter. So I test the starter and everything seemed to work, but since I'm already there, I may well throw a new starter in. By testing the starter, I mean I apply the battery voltage across the terminal, and the switch where you push button switch, the called trigger switch, and there is working fine. But I decided to change the starter anyway. With a new starter, of course, it doesn't work. The real problem is somewhere else. I put the tie around the intake manifold and strap it down to the wheel. Keep it out of my way so I can start working. Put some penetration oil on the bolt, and I'm gonna have fun removing those bolts. Cable connect to the BMW battery. Starter is the old starter I pulled out. Ground wires on the chassis. Positive on the terminal. Screwdriver touching the push switch here. Let's see what happens. Now the moments of truth testing. No, it's still the same problem.